The sword that chose no one for over 5,000 years. The sword stood alone. It was tall, silver, and silent. Its blade shimmered with a light that never faded. It was stuck deep in the black stone floor of the Hall of Trials on the planet Varnock Prime. Around it, giant alien statues watched like guardians' eyes cold. Arms crossed, silent forever. Every alien believed the sword was a test, not just a weapon, but a challenge from the gods. They said, only the worthy one can lift the blade. Only the chosen one can hold it. But nobody ever did. Warriors came, kings came, even machines were built to pull it out. But the sword never moved, not an inch. And so, centuries passed. The aliens still believed, until they started to doubt. Inside the great temple, a high priest stood before the sword. He wore golden robes and held a staff of glowing crystal. His name was Euron V. He had served the temple for 300 years. He watched as another alien failed. The warrior screamed, his forearms shaking, muscles bulging. He tried again and again, but the sword didn't move. No sound, no light. Just silence. Euron turned away. Next, he said, voice flat. Another warrior stepped forward. A different species, taller, thicker bones, covered in blue armor. He failed too, the crowd whispered. Some looked angry, others looked afraid. Is the prophecy false? Someone asked. Have we been lied to? Said another. Euron slammed his staff. Silence. The sword chooses. It is not our place to question. But even Euron felt something was wrong. The sword had been waiting too long, far above, in the sky of Varnock Prime. A small ship entered orbit. It was not sleek, not grand, just a simple human shuttle. Old model, scratched metal. Burned edges. Inside, one man sat in the pilot chair. His name was Jackson Rain. He had gray in his beard. His eyes were tired. He was not a hero, not a soldier anymore. Just a traveler looking for peace. But peace never stayed with him long. Jackson's ship shook as it entered the alien atmosphere. Lights blinked. A warning buzzed. But he kept flying. He didn't know about the sword. He didn't know about the prophecy. He only came because of a message. Come to Varnock. Something is calling. Down below, the temple guards stood at the gates. Euron looked up at the sky. He felt it. A strange energy, a pulled dot. Something was coming. Jackson landed outside the city. As he stepped out of the ship, aliens stared. Some hissed. Some moved back. Others simply watched. He was the only human on the planet. Guards stopped him at the temple steps. You do not belong here. One said. Jackson held up the message. I was invited. The guard looked confused. By who? Jackson shook his head. I don't know, but something. Something told me to come. Inside the Hall of Trials, the crowd grew silent. For the first time in thousands of years, a human entered. Euron stepped forward. What do you seek, human? Jackson looked at the sword. His eyes narrowed. I don't know, he said softly. But I think, ... it's waiting. The aliens gasped. He cannot. One shouted. He is not even of this world. Another cried. Euron raised his hand. Let him try. The room held its breath. Jackson walked slowly toward the sword. His boots echoed on the stone floor. The air felt heavy, like the walls were watching him. Like the blade was alive. He stopped in front of it, reached out, and placed his hand on the hilt. Nothing happened. No lights, no shaking, no sound, but Jackson felt something. A voice, not in words, in feeling, in memory. The sword was not asking for strength. It was asking for something else. Choice, courage, Sacrifice, Jackson. Closed his eyes. The sword grew warm under his hand. The statues around the hall glowed faintly. The floor rumbled. The aliens screamed. The sword, it moves. Euron's eyes widened. His staff fell from his hand. Jackson stepped back, breathing hard. He didn't pull it out, not yet, but he could feel it. The sword had awakened, and now everything would change. The one who shouldn't be chosen, Jackson Rain, stood still. His hand had touched the sword, and the whole hall had felt it. The floor shook, the walls trembled, and the ancient statues glowed like they had never before. But the sword was still. In its place, it had not been lifted, not yet. The aliens around him stared. Some were afraid, some were angry, most were confused. Whispers filled the air like buzzing insects. He touched it, and it moved. No one has ever done that. A human. Impossible. High Priest Euron stepped forward slowly. Eyes did not blink. His heart beat faster than it had in decades. The sword had reacted. Not to a king, not to a warrior, not even to a priest, but to a human. A fragile species. A mistake. This cannot be. Euron whispered to himself. Guards surrounded Jackson. Their armor clanked. Their energy spears lit up with blue fire. But Jackson raised his hands peacefully. I didn't do anything, he said calmly. It ... called me. I just answered. Lies, spat one of the guards. He used some machine. He tricked the sword. Another guard stepped closer. Let us take him. Dissect him. Study what he did. But Euron raised his staff. The room fell silent. No, he is not to be harmed. The sword spoke. It chose to react. We will not ignore that. Jackson looked at Euron. Then what now? Euron's voice was cold. Now, we find out why. Later, Jackson sat alone in a stone room beneath the temple. No windows, just stone and silence. He touched the sword in his mind, not with hands. With memory, he had felt something deep inside it, like a presence. Old, sad, watching. Why me? He whispered. No answer. In another room, the temple council argued. This is madness, said one elder. The sword is meant for the chosen. One not for some weak, flesh-born wanderer. He's not even from our system, another growled. Humans don't belong here. They're short-lived, dirty, violent. But the sword moved, said a younger voice. We can't lie about that. Maybe the stories were wrong. Maybe the chosen one was never one of us. The high priest stood. Quietly, he knew the truth. The sacred scrolls were clear, but chosen would not be strong, not royal, not perfect, but different, and humans were very different. Meanwhile, outside the temple, rumors spread fast. Across the floating cities of Varnak Prime, alien crowds talked about the human. Some called him the chosen one. Some called him a danger. Others called for his death, a secret. Group of alien warriors, the Crimson Sons, made a vow that night. We will not let a human hold our greatest blade. If the priests protect him, we will kill them too. The first plans for war had begun. Back in the temple, Euron met Jackson. Again, you are not welcome here, he said. Jackson nodded. I know you are not strong. You are not noble. You don't belong to any of our tribes. I know that too. Euron stared deep into Jackson's eyes. Then tell me, why did the sword react to you? Jackson paused. I don't know, Euron. Raised his voice. What did you feel? What did it show you? Jackson looked down. It showed me pain, a war, a galaxy on fire. And then, silence. Euron gripped his staff harder. The sword remembers. It holds visions of the past. You saw the Blade Wars. Jackson looked confused. Blade Wars? Euron nodded. The time when the sword was used to destroy entire worlds. That night, Jackson walked alone in the temple garden. Stars above glowed through the energy dome that kept the air warm and clean. Plants from many planets grew here. It was the only place on Varnock Prime where peace still lived. He sat by a blue tree and closed his eyes. He didn't want power. He didn't want war. He had fought enough battles in his time. All he ever wanted was peace. But peace never wanted him back. Suddenly, a soft voice broke the silence. "You're not what I expected." Jackson looked up. A young alien girl stood nearby. She was small, with green skin and big black eyes. She wore simple robes and carried a crystal lantern. "Most people look at the sword and see power," she said. "But you looked sad." Jackson smiled a little. "It reminded me of things I don't want to remember." She nodded. "My father says the sword only reacts to pain, not power." Jackson looked at her. "What's your name?" "Lyra," she said. "And I believe you're the one." He shook his head. "I'm just a man, nothing special." She smiled. "The chosen one is never who people expect." Back in the city, the Crimson Sons prepared for an attack. Their leader, General Theric, growled as he looked at Jackson's image on a hologram screen. "A human has touched the sacred blade. The priests protect him. That makes them traitors." He raised his axe. "At dawn, we take the temple, burn the halls, and kill the human." The night before war, Jackson stood before the sword again. This time, he didn't touch it. He simply looked. "I don't want to be your answer," he whispered. But the sword glowed faintly, like it had hurt him. The first war begins. The morning sky above Varnock Prime turned blood red. It wasn't a storm. It wasn't the sun. It was war inside the temple. Everything felt too quiet. Jackson Rains stood near the great sword again, but this time, the temple. Guards kept their eyes on the outer gates. The peaceful silence of the holy place was slowly turning into fear. Something was wrong. High, Priest Euron stared at the horizon from the tallest spire. His hands tightened around his staff. "They're coming," he whispered. The Crimson Sons moved like fire through the lower city. Thousands of armored aliens marched under red banners. Their leader, General Theric, rode a giant lizard beast with iron scales and red eyes. He wore spiked armor and a mask made from old war bones. "The human is inside," Theric growled to his captains. "Kill the priests, burn the halls. Bring me the sword." "And the human?" asked one captain. Theric's eyes burned. "Leave nothing of him behind." Back at the temple gates, Jackson stood with Euron. "They're really going to attack?" Jackson asked. Euron nodded. "The Crimson Sons believe you are a curse, a false answer to a sacred question." Jackson sighed. "That's the thing. I never asked to be the answer." Euron looked at him for a long time. "No one ever does, Lyra." The young alien girl from the garden ran into the chamber. "They're breaking the outer wall." Screams echoed from the lower halls. Guards rushed to their posts. Ancient doors shut. The shield walls activated, humming with blue light. But everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. The Crimson Sons were born from war, and they had been waiting for this fight. Suddenly, the first explosion hit. The side wall of the temple cracked open in flame. Dust and fire flew into the air. Alien guards screamed as red-armored warriors poured through the breach. Battle had begun. Jackson ran toward the sound. He didn't have a weapon, no armor, just instinct. He saw two priests pinned under fallen stone. Without thinking, he pulled them free. "Go," he shouted. "Find cover." One of them looked at him with disbelief. "You save us, even now." Jackson frowned. "What does that mean?" the priest whispered. "Most warriors only fight for themselves. But you—" Another explosion shook the ground. The priest didn't finish in the sacred chamber. The sword remained in place, glowing, watching, waiting. Weira hid behind one of the statues. She looked at the blade, then at the smoke creeping in through the broken walls. "They're going to take it," she whispered. High Priest Euron tried to hold the front line. His staff glowed as he blocked a strike from Therek's soldiers. But he was old, slow, tired. Tharok appeared behind him like a ghost. The warlord grabbed Euron and slammed him against the wall. "You protect a human over your people," he roared. Euron coughed blood. "I protect the truth." Therek lifted his axe. "Then die with your lies." Before the axe fell, a shot rang out. Therek stumbled back, his shoulder armor sparking. Jackson stood in the smoke, holding a stolen energy rifle. His eyes burned with something Therek didn't expect. Not rage, not pride. Duty. Tharok growled. "You think you can stop me?" Jackson didn't answer. He ran, not away but toward the sacred chamber, toward the sword. Inside, the floor shook harder. The sword glowed brighter. The temple was dying. Walls fell. Statues crumbled. Fire spread. Jackson entered the chamber, coughing, bleeding. Lyra ran to him. "They're going to take the sword," she cried. Jackson looked at the blade. Then he looked at his hands, shaking, dirty, human. "I'm not a king," he said. "I know," Lyra replied. "But maybe that's why it chose you." Outside the chamber, Therek and his soldiers stormed the hallway. Blood covered their blades. Nothing stood in their way, except one thing. Jackson. He stepped forward, between the sword and the enemy. "You should not have come here," Therek spat. Jackson glanced at the sword, and for the first time, he reached for it with purpose. His fingers touched the hilt. The sword lit up like a dying star. Reborn, a deep hum filled the air. Statues cracked. The air exploded with blue fire. Jackson pulled. The stone screamed as the blade tore free. The room went silent. The sword was in his hand. Therek froze. So did everyone else. Jackson held the sword. It didn't burn him. It didn't weigh him down. It felt like home. Therek roared and charged. Jackson moved like a shadow. The sword clashed against Therek's axe and shattered it. One strike, Therek flew back, crashing through a pillar. Lyra stared in awe. "You lifted it?" Jackson didn't smile. He looked at the sword. "It lifted me." Euron crawled into the room, bleeding but smiling. "The first one in 5,000 years, he whispered. But then, the sword began to change. Its glow turned dark for a moment. Jackson saw flashes again, worlds burning, people screaming, the sword destroying them all. He dropped to one knee. "What are you?" he gasped. The sword pulsed in his mind. He heard it again. "I am not a weapon. I am a test. And you are only at the beginning." Jackson looked up at the stars through the broken ceiling. The first war had begun, but it would not be the last. The blade remembers. Jackson Rain held the sword tightly in his hands. It was no longer cold. It was alive. It burned, but not like fire. The heat was deeper. Inside his chest, inside his head, his vision blurred. The world faded, and suddenly, he was not in the temple anymore. He stood in a sky filled with fire. Stars exploded above him. Planets crumbled below. He was in space, but not alone. Around him floated ships made of gold and stone. Ancient alien vessels, beautiful, terrifying. They were not fighting each other. They were running. From something behind them came the light. A single white beam from a sword. The same sword now in his hands. But this time, it destroyed everything in its path. Jackson gasped and fell to his knees. He was back in the temple. Lyra rushed to his side. What happened? Jackson looked at the blade. It pulsed softly. I saw death, not war. Extinction. Euron stood across the room, weak but alive. You saw the Blade Wars, he said. The memory stored inside the weapon. Jackson looked at the priest. It did that? Euron nodded. The sword was not made by us or anyone alive today. It's older than our sons, made by a race that vanished before history. Why did they make it? To end wars. Jackson frowned. That sword didn't end a war. It ended everything. Euron stepped closer. The blade judges its wielder. Shows them the truth. Not everyone can bear it. Jackson looked down. Then why show me? Because it chose you. The temple was in ruins. Fires still burned. The Crimson Sons had retreated. For now, but not far. They would return. And with more soldiers, Euron, Lyra. And Jackson gathered in the hidden chamber below the temple. Stone walls lined with ancient carvings. Symbols no one could read. Even Euron, the high priest, only knew fragments. They placed the sword on a stone altar. It glowed faintly. This room is called the Heart of Silence, Euron explained. Built before our time. Built by the ones who made the sword. Lyra pointed to a symbol. That looks like Jackson. Jackson looked. It was a carved image of a tall figure holding a sword. Light coming from his chest. Eyes full of fire. Euron nodded. It is the chosen. But that symbol is older than Earth, Jackson said. Yes, Euron whispered. That's why it frightens us. Jackson touched the carving dot in a flash. The blade showed him more. A different world. A different time. He saw a being made of pure energy, surrounded by light. It held the sword. Led armies. Then cried as it used the blade to destroy a dying sun. The sword spoke in feelings, not words. We were many. We became one. The sword must choose wisely, or history will burn again. Jackson opened his eyes. The sword, remembers everything. Every war, every death. Euron nodded. And it fears you. Jackson stepped back. Why me? Because you are human, Euron said. And humans. Unpredictable. Outside the ruins, a storm began to rise. Not of weather, of politics, of fear. Alien news feeds showed images of Jackson holding the sword. Some praised him, others cursed his name. On other planets, alien leaders prepared. Fleets. Some wanted to study him. Others wanted him dead. The galaxy was changing. Meanwhile, on a hidden moon deep in uncharted space, an ancient machine woke up. Its core was black, its body tall and thin. It had waited for 10,000 years. A signal reached its mind. The blade has awakened. The machine turned to face the stars. Begin Phase 2. Back on Varnak Prime, Jackson couldn't sleep. He stood outside the temple ruins, sword in hand. Lyra joined him. You should rest, she said. I've never felt more awake, he replied. Lyra sat beside him. Are you afraid? Jackson nodded. The sword remembers war. So do I. She looked at him. But maybe that's why it chose you. Not because you love to fight, but because you hate it. He looked at her and smiled faintly. You're smarter than most generals I've met. She grinned. I'm 12. They both laughed softly. The first laugh since the blade was lifted, but far away. Trouble was already moving. On a command ship floating above a dead world. A war council watched Jackson's image. The human wields the final sword, one general growled. That cannot happen again, said another. A third leaned forward. Last time, we lost half the galaxy. They voted in silence. Unanimous, Jackson Rain must be eliminated. Back in the heart of silence, the sword glowed again. Jackson stood before it. "I don't want to destroy," he whispered. The blade pulsed. "Then learn what was forgotten." Jackson saw stars forming. He saw peaceful cities, harmony between species, and then one lie, one betrayal. The blade wasn't made to kill, it was made to judge. Only when used in hate did it destroy. He stepped back. "I get it now." Euron raised an eyebrow. "Get what?" Jackson looked him in the eye. "The sword wasn't testing aliens. It was testing us," Euron whispered. "Then the war has only just begun." Enemies of the past, the sword was quiet. Too quiet, it had shown Jackson's visions galaxies burning. Cities turning to dust, a race long gone. But now the blade rested like a sleeping giant, waiting, watching, deep beneath the temple ruins. Jackson sat alone in the heart of silence. The sword lay beside him, not glowing, not pulsing, just still. He stared at it. "You've shown me the past," he whispered. "Show me what's coming." No answer. Only silence above ground. The temple priests tried to rebuild what was lost. Smoke still rose from the broken towers. The bodies of the fallen had been taken away, but their memories remained in every crack, every scorched stone. Euron stood with Lyra near the front gates. "The people are scared," Lyra said. "They think more soldiers are coming." "They are," Euron replied. "How do you know?" "Because when power appears, fear follows it." In the far reaches of the galaxy, beyond any charted system, a signal echoed into space. Not a normal signal. It was ancient, made of code that no living species could understand. But something did hear it. Something old. Something buried. On the dead planet Severa. A black mountain cracked open. Dust clouds rose into a poisoned sky from beneath the rock. Machines emerged, tall, thin, silent, with long arms and glass faces. They were called the Chowzek. They were not alive, they were not dead. They were memory-given metal, and they had waited for the sword to awaken in the sky above Varnock Prime. A large alien fleet appeared. 15 ships in perfect formation, no warning, no contact. They weren't from the Crimson Suns, they were the Valeria, powerful species that once ruled half the galaxy. Cold, calculating, beautiful in appearance, but deadly in mind. A message was sent to the temple: surrender the human and the sword, or we will take both. Inside the temple, Jackson watched the message play on a glowing screen. "They don't even ask questions." "Huh?" he muttered. "They're afraid," Euron said behind him. "Afraid of me?" Jackson asked. Euron shook his head. "Afraid of what?" "You might awaken." Lyra entered the room, holding an old tablet. "I found this in the deep vault," she said. "It's not written in any known language." Jackson took it. The writing on the stone wasn't words, it was pictures. A figure, holding the sword. A group of machines rising from the ground. A galaxy burning. And then, a human face. Jackson frowned. "This is a warning." Euron nodded. "From the first builders. The ones who made the sword. What's it saying? That if the sword is lifted again, the old enemy will return." In the outer city, a strange figure moved through the shadows. Wrapped in a dark cloak, with glowing green eyes, it watched the temple from a rooftop. It tapped a device on its wrist. "I have eyes on the human," it whispered. A voice replied through the cum. "Do not act until the Valerie fleet opens fire." Back in the heart of silence, Jackson had a choice. Give up the sword, or stand and face an enemy he didn't even understand. He stared at the weapon. "I was a soldier once," he said. "I killed because I was told to. Then I stopped. I didn't want to fight anymore, Euron listened quietly. But if this is my war now, Jackson's voice grew cold. Then I fight on my terms. Suddenly, the sword glowed bright red. The room trembled. Everyone stepped back. Jackson stood tall. The blade pulsed once, then spoke this time in his mind. The ones who fear you will come first, but they are not the true threat. The ones who remember me, are already awake. Far away, the Shalzek machines finished building a gate. A swirling hole of energy formed in the center. One of them stepped forward. Target located. It said in a voice that sounded like broken glass. Human signature confirmed. Recover the blade. Erase the host. Back on Varnak Prime, the Valari fleet made its move. A blinding light shot from the lead ship. The temple shields, cracked stones fell from the ceiling. Priests screamed. Jackson ran to the front steps. Ships flew low over the city, their weapons glowing. People ran in fear. Fires began to spread. He raised the sword high. It reacted instantly, forming a wall of blue light. Above him, the beam from the enemy ship hit it and stopped. The crowd gasped. Jackson didn't flinch. Lyra rushed to him. You're glowing. The light around Jackson's body shimmered. Like armor, the sword was no longer just a weapon. It was defending him, protecting him, fighting with him. Inside the Valar command ship, the leader Archon Celis slammed his hand on the console. The blade has bonded with the host, he growled. Another commander said, then it's too late. Celis turned. No, it means we must destroy them together. Back in the temple, a sudden blast shook the ground. From below. Not from the sky, a hole opened in the floor, and out of it crawled something metal, tall. Long arms, black armor, a Shalzek unit. Everyone froze. Euron gasped. They've already arrived. The machine turned its head, looked directly at Jackson, and pointed. Surrender the blade. Jackson didn't move, or be erased. Jackson lifted the sword. You're welcome to try. The blade lit up like a star being born. The war of memory had begun, and this time humanity was ready. The trial beyond stars. The gate opened with a scream, not a sound, but a feeling like thousands of voices shouting from another universe. A swirling hole of silver and black light stood in the center of the ruined chamber. The sword in Jackson's hand glowed softly, not bright, not loud, just steady. Where does it lead? He asked. Euron, standing beside him, looked uncertain. We don't know. It's only that it was left by the builders, the ones who made the sword, and that it was never meant to open again. Jackson stared at the portal. Then why is it open? Now Euron's eyes narrowed. Because you lifted it. The temple had fallen silent after the attack. The Valari fleet pulled back, confused by the sudden arrival of the Shalzek machines. And the machines didn't attack again. They were waiting for Jackson. To enter the gate, the sword had become the key, and the trial had just begun. Jackson stood before the portal, gripping the sword. I'll go, he said, alone. No, Euron replied. You will not return if you go alone. I can handle it. Euron shook his head. This is not a war. It's a trial, and trials are not meant to be faced in silence. So, a team was formed. Lyra, the young alien girl with ancient knowledge from her father's scrolls. Nira, a former Valar soldier who had defected after seeing the blade's light and feeling something she couldn't explain. Tech, a stone-skinned engineer from a mining moon giant in size, silent in nature, but loyal once convinced. Together, they stepped into the gate and vanished from the galaxy. What came next was not a planet, Not a ship, not a space. It was a place. Beyond stars, a world that judges. They stood on a floating platform above nothing. The sky was purple smoke. The ground shifted like liquid glass. In every direction were broken staircases, floating doors, and glowing orbs that whispered in voices. Not their own. What? ... Is this place? Lyra asked, trembling. Jackson looked at the sword. It's not a real place. Nira raised her weapon. Then what is it? A memory, Jackson said. A test built from thought, not matter. The sword pulsed. A voice filled the air, not male, not female, just ancient. 3 trials, 1 truth. If the blade lives, the lie must die. Then everything split. Each team member vanished, each alone, each facing something different. Jackson's trial, he stood on a battlefield. Earth's battlefield. The same one where he lost everything. He saw his old unit, his commander, the enemy lines, and the mistake he had given the order. And civilians had died. No, he whispered. I moved them. I made sure. A voice whispered from the sword. You can't change what you were. Jackson fell to his knees. I was doing my duty, but you forgot your soul. A figure stepped forward, his younger self, holding a bloodied helmet. Would you follow you now? The figure asked. Jackson raised his head. No. Then prove you've changed, the figure said. Vanishing Lyra's trial, she stood in front of her father, live again. He smiled at her. Come home, little one. Tears filled her eyes. You're dead. Not here, he said. Not if you stay. She reached for him, but the ground cracked. Truth is not comfort, whispered the sword. Don't go, she begged. Her father smiled. You know what you must do? She cried as she stepped back, and he faded into light. Nira's trial, she stood in full Valerie armor, surrounded by her old squad. Her captain shouted, kill the human. She aimed her rifle at Jackson's image. The squad watched, waiting. If she fired, she would belong again. But the sword whispered, belonging built on lies is still a cage. She threw down the rifle, and the illusion shattered. Tech's trial, his, was different. He stood before a wall of mirrors. Each showed a version of him, angrier, crueler, stronger. None spoke, but each pointed at the real him and laughed. He smashed them one by one, until only one remained. It showed him, smiling, happy, and alone. He paused, then touched it gently. It did not break. He passed. The team reappeared on the floating platform, different. Now, stronger, weaker, real. The sky cracked open. Above them appeared a massive shape, light and shadow. Part machine, part being. A builder echo, a being made of the minds who created the sword. It looked down at Jackson. You carry the burden. I don't want it, he said, but you carry it. Jackson held up the sword. Why me? Because humans choose, and what they choose shapes the stars. The being raised its arms, and the platform lit up. One more vision entered Jackson's mind, not past, future. He saw the shoals, single quotes, Z-E-K. Thousands of them, swallowing systems, killing everything that could not be judged. And in the center, a sword like his, but darker, twisted, held by a being with no face, a shadow. That is what comes, the voice said. A sword awakened always brings its opposite. Jackson gasped. We didn't just wake the blade. You woke the war. The gate reopened. The team stood at the edge. They had passed the trial, but the war was waiting.